The Dershow.
Today, I want to talk about a constitutional issue as if it were an abstract theoretical constitutional issue, because it is abstract. I mean, let me start with the end. President Trump will not serve a third term. That's my prediction. And he won't, not because he might not be elected to the third term, like Franklin Roosevelt was elected very overwhelmingly to a third term and also to a fourth term, but because after President Roosevelt was elected to his fourth term, they passed the 22nd Amendment. And the 22nd Amendment is as clear as anything could possibly be. No, it's not actually. It has one ambiguous word. It says, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. No person shall be elected to the office of president. So what President Trump's people have been saying, because he says, well, I don't know, maybe I'll run again a third time. He can't run. He can't be elected to the office unless there's a constitutional amendment. And to get a constitutional amendment through today is impossible. You need 2/3 of both houses. And you need 3/4 of the states. You just can't get it. It's just not. We live in a partisan world. The only amendments that ever get passed now are amendments over which there was almost universal acceptance. Even the Equal Rights Amendment for women eventually didn't make it. I mean, according to Larry Tribe, it made it, but according to everybody else, it failed by its own terms. Remember, amendments have their own terms. For example, the 22nd Amendment says basically that, let's see, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislature of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. And the Equal Rights Amendment didn't make that kind of cutoff. And Tribe says that's okay because he likes that amendment. I like the amendment too, but it can't be passed unless it's passed pursuant to the terms that its own words provide. So the president cannot be elected. He cannot be elected to a third term. What some people are talking about is saying, well, here we can get around that because here's what we're going to do. We're going to get J.D. Vance to be elected president, and we're going to get Donald Trump to be elected vice president. He's going to be elected vice president. And then J.D. Vance will resign. And so then, pursuant to the 22nd Amendment, he'll be allowed to serve because he will not have been elected. He will not have been elected to that office. No person shall be elected. He will have been appointed to the office through the succession process, which is part of the Constitution. If the president can't serve, the vice president serves. There's only one problem with that. There's another amendment to the Constitution. It's called the 12th Amendment. You remember from the play Hamilton, there was a screw up as to how you elect the vice president and the president, and so they passed the 12th Amendment. But here's what the 12th Amendment says. No person shall be no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. So since he wouldn't be eligible to the office of president, he is not eligible to the office of vice president. So the ploy of electing him as vice president and appointing him as president won't work. Now, there is another possibility. Again, we're talking about legally abstract possibilities. See if I can find it. I think I put it on my, here it is. Okay. So there is also the Presidential Succession Act. There have been 3 of them enacted by Congress. One at the time of the framing, another in the 19th century sometimes, and another one after President Roosevelt died and Harry Truman was made the president. He had been the vice president, and he was worried, well, what if he dies? Who then becomes the president? So they passed the Presidential Succession Act. So here's the way it is argued by the Trump supporters of a third term. He could become president. It's very clever, but in the end, I don't think it works. It's very clever, though. Okay. So whoever gets elected president 4 years from now, that's fine. Whoever that person is appoints Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, to be either the Speaker of the House, which you can do without being a member of the House, or you can run for the House, or appoints him to be Secretary of State. Secretary of State, okay? Then everybody resigns. President resigns, Vice President resigns, Speaker of the House resigns, President pro tempore of the Senate resigns. Who then becomes president under the Presidential Succession Act? The Secretary of State. So Donald Trump becomes the president through the Presidential Succession Act without being elected president. So that doesn't violate the 22nd Amendment. It doesn't violate the 12th Amendment, but it may very well violate the terms of the Presidential Succession Act itself. Okay, the Presidential Succession Act says subsections A, B, and D, those are the relevant sections, shall apply only to such offices as are eligible to the office of president under the Constitution. So let's do a hypothetical. Let's assume that when Nixon resigned, let's assume Ford then resigned and the Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate will resign. The next person would have been the Secretary of State. Who was the Secretary of State? Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, however, was not eligible to be president of the United States. Why not? He was not born in the United States. And the only people eligible to be president have to be born in the United States. So Kissinger could not have been eligible. So the question is whether the law that says shall apply only to officers appointed who are eligible to the office of president, whether Trump is eligible to be president. That brings us back to the 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment doesn't talk about who's eligible to be president. The 22nd Amendment talks about who can run for president. And so the argument would go, who can be elected president? 22nd Amendment, no person shall be elected. So the question goes back to, if he is he eligible to be president if he's not elected president, but he's appointed president? That, I think, is the loophole through which they are trying to drive an elephant